All right, you are looking at the Singer 1591 that was recently featured in that giveaway contest, and it's done. It's ready to be shipped. I just went through all the final checks, the final testing, the final stitch off validations, and I'm also going to be doing some stitch off confirmations on camera as well. Again, this beauty was born back on November 19th, 1951. It's driven by that potted motor, the 0.6 amp motor, and it's got a lot of oomph. I wanted to point out a couple things before we jump into things here, because they are pitfalls that can even trip up the most experienced sewer. Number one, we're kind of going down to the needle for a reason. One is, I want to emphasize that the needle shaft on this Singer 1591 has what I would consider to be a flaw. When you slide the needle up into most shafts, they're going to be one directional. In other words, if you put that flat side the correct direction, it's not going to have the tendency to rotate. On the Singer 1591, it does. And if we get extremely close, you're probably going to be able to see sorry, you're not going to be able to see if I cough at the same time. You're going to be able to see that the flat side of that needle is facing the left. If you don't put it that way, you're going to end up getting a lot of skip stitches, and you're going to be facing other stitching issues. I'm going to step over there real quick and kind of show you an example of what you might get with this. Right here, you've got probably around 5 or 6 skip stitches. You can actually see the thread kind of buckling up a little bit, and you'll kind of get a hit and miss. That's going to be a needle orientation issue. And on the 1591, by nature of how the shaft is designed, where you slide that needle in, and that needle is all the way with the flat side to the left, and as you tighten down that needle clamp, that needle will have a tendency to rotate forward, and then you'll all of a sudden be experiencing skip stitches. So watch for that. Also, you're going to be threading this through the needle from right to left, and again, by nature of design, you can see that when you're threading this machine, you'll come off the top, and then you'll come down through the tension discs. You're going to then come over this little point right here, and then around through the tension spring and up to the take-up arm. This will sometimes slide off of that small little thread guide right here that leads into that tension spring, and all of a sudden you'll have weird stuff happening with the balance of that stitch between the lock-in and the top stitch. So watch for that as well, that thread doesn't slide off of there. It's no fault of yours, it's just by nature of the machine design. And of course you're going to come off of there across the faceplate to there, down to here again with that needle flat side pointing to the left, and then you're going to thread this machine from right to left. Okay? So I just wanted to go through that because you know what? It can trip up anyone, including me. And so I wanted to make sure that you had that little tip in relation to this particular Singer model. So let me rotate this around. This machine really was a pleasure to work on. I know that Danielle out in Washington State is extremely excited to receive this machine. And I'm excited to get it heading that way so that I can enjoy working on another machine, which is going to be for Joe. Joe not only shipped me an incredible machine, but also a cabinet as well to restore for her. And just by nature of the number of machines in the lineup, and then also my father unexpectedly passing, that project has kind of fallen by the wayside. So that looks like a pretty good distance right about there. So let me get over there, and we're going to just stitch down some leather. I'd like to do a stitch off with some vegetable tan leather. Also, we're going to do some garment leather, and also ultimately we're going to be sewing off on some denim. Now, vegetable tan leather, you can see from the side, is probably going to be about 4 ounces or so. So it's not easy stuff to go through. The processing of this leather really does make it quite a challenge from a piercing standpoint. So we're going to slide this underneath the presser foot. I'm going to get it in there, and what we're going to try to do is just do kind of a stitch down and around and back, just to show you how beautifully leather feeds through this machine, and how much ease, when the machine is properly restored, it is to get through leather as difficult as this. Now, I want to emphasize, as I've done in previous videos, not all machines, once they've left the factory and they're out there in the world doing whatever they're doing, are going to be created equal. It really does take a very, very specific restorative process like the one that I use in order to achieve maximum performance. So with that said, let me go ahead and stitch off on this vegetable tan leather, and then we'll kind of migrate through the other conformation stitch offs as well. And the 1591, like the 201 and other potted machines, sometimes when you're sewing heavier grade like this, a little hand start does not hurt at all. So I'm just going to give it a light hand start. It really doesn't need it. And then we'll see if we can stitch around this real quick, and I'll get my arm out of the way, hopefully. All right, here we go. Yeah, I turned a little bit late. That's okay. I'm going to cheat and lift the presser foot a little bit, and we'll have a little gobbledygook there just by nature of my slow response. Well, I don't know what you can hear through the camera, and my turn was pretty awful there, but oh well. It happens to all of us. But this machine, after I've went through it and done my detailed restoration, it just runs so quiet and so beautifully. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I can zoom in a little bit and go across this stitch again. Forgive my horrible turn there. When we got to the end, I was trying to handle it a little bit too gently, and sometimes you need to use a little bit more muscle to get the result that you want. So let's go ahead and zoom in. We're going to kind of move across that stitch, and that stitch quality is absolutely spot on. I don't have exactly the right angle to show you. You can see it a lot clearer there, but the stitch formation, the stitch spacing, everything about that stitch is just absolutely spectacular. More so than my camera right now, which is having some issues with going out of focus. So let's go ahead and move this vegetable tan leather to the side, and what I'm going to stitch off on next for confirmation purposes is this garment leather. And the garment leather is going to be a little bit easier from a piercing threshold than this vegetable tan, but don't let that trick you, because we're still talking about 2 layers of this plus an inner lining as well. And I've got to spin my little screen around so I can see what you're seeing here. I'm kind of out of my rhythm after not having been in front of the camera for a while, so you'll have to give me some grace as far as not being quite as polished as I typically am, and forgive me for that. So okay, so now we're going to go ahead and stitch off on this garment leather. Garment leather is used in a lot of different applications, certainly in making different clothing articles, coats and such, but it's also used in a number of other appliques as well. Even have some customers that use this type of material for making keepsakes and teddy bears and such. So I've got that presser foot down. We're going to go ahead and just stitch off. I don't know if I'm going to try that turn and embarrass myself twice, being a little bit rusty after being away from the bench for a while, but maybe I'll give it a try. So All right, 2 layers of genuine garment leather, and it also has that inner lining as well. So here we go. All right, let's just make a cheater's turn here, and we'll head back the other direction. You notice that was good, and I had to throttle it just a little bit, and that still wasn't even close to the power that this machine has with that 0.6 amp potted motor. It's all about power. It's all about burst when it comes to sewing through heavier grade materials like this. So let me do this, because I really want you to see the stitch quality on this garment leather. The color of thread that I chose, and this is not a specialized thread, this is a Coats & Clark general purpose type thread, but it really does an excellent job of showing off the stitch quality as it relates to this 1591. Look at that, absolutely spectacular. The spacing, the formation, everything about it. So you know what, I am absolutely convinced that this machine is definitely ready to go to the customer, but we're going to do one more stitch off. We've already demonstrated the garment leather, and let me turn it over as well. Why should I deny you the opportunity of seeing that lock stitch as well? Again, if you have that thread slide off of that tension center, you're going to see a different result when it comes to the lock stitch, but what you're seeing right now is absolutely spectacular. Everything about it. I'm going to try to get my movement slow enough that it doesn't get out of focus at all, and everything about that stitch is just spot on. Really, really spectacular. And you want that when you're dealing with garment leather in particular, because every flaw in relation to that stitch is going to show if you don't have it absolutely balanced perfectly, and if that machine isn't doing what it needs to be doing. So the next thing we're going to stitch off on is denim. Denim has its own challenges when it comes to sewing off. Denim has a higher piercing threshold than even some leathers, and what we love to do with the 1591s, because they are what they are, I mean, they're designed as a machine that can pretty much go through anything when it's properly restored. And so I like to demonstrate a little bit more of what this machine is capable of. So we've got heavy grade denim here. You can see that through the camera. We're not going to go through one layer. We're going to try to go through multiple layers, and I haven't folded for a while, so I'm going to kind of spitball here as far as the number of layers. And this stuff is really hard, extremely rigid stuff, so I'm having to really kind of almost crease it in order to get it to stay in place. So there's 2 layers right there. Now we're up to 3 layers. We're up to 4 layers, and I think that's about where we're going to end. I'd love to go higher than that, but again, my folding skill isn't quite up to par at this point. So I'm going to slide that underneath the presser foot. And the one thing you'll note about the 1591, the same thing is true of the 201 as well, is they really are designed with a huge amount of clearance underneath that presser foot. It's designed for heavy grade sewing. It's designed for sewing multiple layers, whether it's quilt batting or whether it's denim in this instance. All right, so I'm going to move that take-up arm to the highest position. That's really the way this machine launches best. And we're going to go ahead and gauge that, and then we'll take a look and see how this machine is done with multiple layers of denim. Here we go. Now, if you were able to see my foot, on how much power was I giving that foot control? I was giving it probably about 1/4 power. But at the same time, this machine, because of what I've done to restore it, every spec of that power within that motor is just maximized. Look at the stitch as well, and I'm going to zoom in on this, but the stitch quality, the formation, I'm going to try to rotate it different directions so you can see it. Everything about that stitch formation, spacing is just spectacular. And I'll zoom in as well. And here we've got the lock stitch on the bottom, and it looks equally outstanding. So let me try to get just the right angle. It's sometimes hard to get the material to stay in place. And I will go ahead and zoom in so you can get even a closer look. If I can get it balanced, there we go. A closer look at that stitch quality. Doesn't matter if you can go through 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 layers of heavy grade denim like this if the result is to have a stitch that doesn't present well. Well, you know what? We definitely are not facing that challenge here. I'm going to kind of move from left to right here slowly as much as I can, and you be the judge. That stitch formation, the spacing, the way it presents, you know what? It doesn't get any better than that. And we're talking 5 layers of denim, if I recall correctly. Let's just say that it is the thick of thick. And so I think I've done a really good job in getting this machine ready. I'm going to kind of zoom out a little bit here and wrap up the end of this video. This 1591, born back in the 1950s, it is more than ready to head out to Washington State to get the job done for Danielle. And Danielle, if you're watching this, she's ready. And she's going to work for you like you've never seen any machine work for many, many, many years to come. Basic maintenance, and this machine, man oh man, she will just perform beyond your wildest dreams. So I know you're going to enjoy this machine, and others are probably looking on and saying, doggone it, I wish I had gotten that one. Well, I do have one other 1591 in my inventory. It's not ready yet, but if you have an interest in owning a machine like this, reach out. I wouldn't wait too long, and I'll see if I can set you up as I did with Danielle. So this 1591 receives my stamp of approval, and I'm going to put all these sew-offs over here with the machine, and these will also go with the machine when it's shipped off to my customer, as with any customer. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of this channel and being a subscriber, and have a great day. And it's great to be back at the workbench again. So take care.